Hi, everybody. It is Penny and Kim here again, lighting up your Friday with the 5 stars of strengthening families. We're continuing. This is our last point on this topic, I guess, of communication and building the social and emotional competency of our children. Penny's going to start us off again with the check-in from last week.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks again for coming back. So we talked about last week, what is your child's role in building a healthy parent-child relationship? And we talked about what research is indicating is that children don't really have a role other than to just be children, and sometimes a little bit of the teacher for ourselves to show us to ourselves in the areas that we might need to skill build a bit. And at the end, we invited you to try to build your awareness around this topic as far as what your expectations are of your child in your relationship with them. Are those realistic expectations? Are they even attainable? Just, again, always starting with awareness and going from there. So hope you had some time to think about that a little bit. And again, feel free to reach out if you have more questions or you found something interesting and you want to discuss it. Yeah. Or if, like Kim had mentioned in the series or the session last week, that if you feel like you're struggling with your own things, please reach out to FCSS. We have free counseling and someone can certainly help you with working through some of that stuff. So our website, as always, is the place to look for contact information for that. So now I'm going to hand the mic over to Kim. She's going to get us started on our question for today.
Yep. All right. Okay. So the question for today is, how do you protect your children from you on your worst day? Because we all have them. We're human beings and we all have them. So how do you protect your children from you on your worst day? Take it away, Penny.
Okay, so I think I just got to share what we were talking about before we came on air, Kim, is that
Sure.
we were laughing because it is so funny because there's a lot of worst days or there was for me as a parent of 2 small children. And I remember posting on some social media, is it bad? Or it's a bad day when you decide you're going to sit your 3-year-old down in front of the TV with a bag of chips and a can of pop, and laughing about people's responses were like, well, it's only bad if you don't include the licorice, or and Kim had shared that, yeah, pop and chips, right, in the car.
I did it too, Penny. I did it too. I have to say, I wanted my kids to behave on the way to Lethbridge, and there was no TV or video in the vehicle. So I stopped and I got them pop and chips. Yeah, so I was desperate. It was a day that I just couldn't. I like you said earlier, TV or you on that day and you're at your worst. And really, the TV was where they needed to be, so that you probably could have some time to regroup and not say things that you don't mean. We're laughing about it now and joking about it, but it's not to take away from it, because it is a really serious topic, because oftentimes when we are frustrated, that is when we say things that we don't mean, and we do things that we don't mean. And sometimes it is best to just take a breath if we can and take a step back. And it might even be take a step back so that we can take a breath, actually. And then not beat up on ourselves when we do put them in front of the TV or give them something that we know is basically an accidental reward, and we've all done it. But in those moments, as long as it's not our go-to, it's not happening all the time, right? But if it's a moment where they're just really better off in front of the TV than with us at that moment, And it would be great if there was somebody that we could sort of say, okay, you know what, I need some support in this. Can I get you to come over and help watch the kids while I go take a walk? But so many of us are single parenting during the day, or are single parenting, and there is no relief, especially now with all of the restrictions around the pandemic. You're kind of in it on your own, and so sometimes everybody just needs a break. So
yeah, that's all very true. And so one thing I wanted to talk about before I forget is even just figuring out what your worst really is. That idea of it's going to look different for different people and there's no comparing. And I love what you said about it not being your go-to. So we're in no way advocating pops and chips.
yeah.
However, that the struggle is real, right? People need those moments. So, yeah, that was the one thing, was what is your worst mean? And is that happening more often than not? And do you need some support, like you mentioned? Getting some feedback. Are you getting that feedback?
A little, but I think it's okay.
Okay. Oh, now it's come back to me. The idea of how this ties into social and emotional competence. So if we're looking at how do we want our children to be as adults, and how do we want them to learn, first of all, how do we want them to learn self-compassion, right? So we want to show them that sometimes I need a break, and sometimes I need to do what I need to do. I'm not perfect, and that's okay. So they understand that about themselves, that we're all humans and they don't have to be perfect. And then you move into the beautiful model of self-regulation. Okay. So I know that right now I'm struggling, so I'm going to take some time for myself. And this isn't something you're saying to them, but they're seeing it, right? And you can even say in an age appropriate way, oh, mom's really tired right now. I'm going to just sit with my book and you're going to watch, Daniel Tiger. And mom's just going to take some time. And then when you're done and I'm done, then we can come back together and do whatever we're going to do. And then the hope is after you've had your pop and chips break, you'll be in a place to be able to deal with their upsets during that day. So hopefully it's taking you from your worst, back to that place where you can model that healthy emotional language to them, right? So I think about when I'm at my worst and my child senses that, because they do. It's not a coincidence that when you're at your worst, your children are as well, because they can tell. So they start feeling anxious. So going back to what we talked about last week about being that secure person, taking a break is essential so that they still feel secure and safe, right? And then you can come from that place of feeling a little better about things. And when they get mad and upset, you can talk them through that, right? With the language that builds that competence in them. So there's just so many wonderful components around pop and chips. I mean, come on.
I do want to say a couple things. One of them is, the pop and chips was probably not my best parenting moment, because the pop and the sugar tends to wind them up a bit. So if you feel the need to do something like that, do try to pick something a little bit more healthy, maybe. I'm just saying. And interestingly enough, I just noted, I just saw this, this latest research that if there is high anxiety or high stress, the chewing actually activates the vagus nerve, which then activates the parasympathetic nervous system and actually calms. So Penny, we may have been onto something.
And carbohydrates are a natural tranquilizer.
Oh, okay, I did not know that.
That's why there's so much starchy food at funerals.
Oh, wow, okay,
It's like our comfort food. Like if you
So
think
maybe
about every comfort food is some kind of a starch. Like nobody goes for broccoli as a comfort food.
That's right, yeah. Wow, that's true.
So,
yeah, so maybe try to do a little somewhere in between broccoli and pops, if we could get somewhere in between there.
that's the goal. That's the goal anyway.
Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to mention too was that this is where we often, for ourselves, can kind of put the we can put some heavy stress on ourselves with when we do kind of lose it. I always say blew a gasket because my husband's a mechanic. And so I'm like, oh, I really blew a gasket there yesterday. Hey, I'm really, I'm sorry if that scared you or that I did scare you or whatever. So that's really kind of doing the repair work. And that's also modeling to our kids how to sort of repair the any damage that might have been done in our blowing of the gasket. Right. So as you blow, things get hit, there's some shrapnel. And so this way, but this work is done in the memory. It's not done in the moment. Like you have to wait until some time has passed and then say and then bring it up. Don't be afraid, because otherwise it feels like, well, I guess that's just, we're not talking about that anymore. And then whatever, our upset might have sprinkled the shrapnel that might have hit, it doesn't ever get repaired, if that makes sense. So that's why if we can come to them and say, wow, I really blew a gasket yesterday. I was tired, or what I said hurt you, and I do apologize, for hurting you. That was not my intent, that kind of thing. I think that's an important piece. And oftentimes we think, well, I don't think I should be apologizing to my, children. But the reality is that's the best way to teach them how to give a sincere apology, is for them to see somebody modeling one. And it also helps them to understand that sometimes we all lose our temper, and this is how we make amends. So.
And I'm going to tell you right now, I've not met a parent who can do it all and be it all forever. There comes a point when it implodes. So it's almost better to take your moments as they come and deal with them. And again, if you're finding there's a lot of them, reach out for help. But sometimes just one stop to allow yourself to be a human being. If you do that each time you're feeling that way, it doesn't build up into a major, because it can, and it can build up into a major mental health episode, because there's so much pressure to be the Pinterest mom or dad or grandparent or caregiver, right? You're still a human being in a life as well as being a parent. So doing it all, to me, is something that we need to let go of.
Yeah, and we're also modeling that for our kids and setting those standards for them to try to achieve when they're parents too. And that's not. And I always say, parenting is like hills and valleys. And if you manage to parent, perfectly on the top of the hill all the time, you're not really doing your children any favors. You're not doing your own mental health any favors, as you just said, but not your children either, because oftentimes the biggest learning in life happens in those valleys, in those moments when we're not perfect, right? And then we get the opportunity to do the repair work after afterwards. That's the real deal, not just coasting along with everything perfect. Like you say, the Pinterest. I thought you were going to say the perfect parent, but you said the Pinterest parent. It makes sense, because oftentimes that's what's portrayed, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, you've said this before, but you know, that idea of fluidity and as long as we're not, you know, constantly moving along down here and never feeling like we're, you know, if we're down at the bottom and we're feeling like that all the time, you know, that's when you want to consider reaching out, because asking for help is another way you protect your children from yourself. So, okay. So our challenge now is think about your worst days and think about a backup plan. What's it going to be when, not if, you have a bad day? Is it going to be broccoli and chips? Is it going to be the TV, the iPad? Is it going to be, well, right now, an outdoor park date with grandma? Is it going to be, I mean, I don't know. In each family, in each culture, there's different ways that we take the burden off of parenting for 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever you can get. Sometimes, yeah, sometimes the idea of a break becomes so big that it doesn't get incorporated. So I don't need you to take my kids so I can go to the shopping mall for a full day. Well, that would be nice. But maybe even could you just take them to the park for an hour? Or can I put them in front of the TV for 20 minutes while I sit and do nothing, drink my tea, my coffee? So again, we're always hammering home small things. So if you can do the grand things, great, because some people do have that support. If you can't, think about the little, all of those little bits of pieces of time for you help feed you.
Yeah.
So think about those small steps. Okay, so that concludes our communication series dealing with social and emotional competence in children. So next week, we will be starting again with a different start and choosing some different questions. And we're going to be continuing this series ongoing. So yeah, hope you can join us. And we will see you next week.
Have a good weekend.
Bye for now.